Happy lunch hour, guys. Sorry for being a sweaty mess here, but me and Mrs. P were out in the yard, tilling gardens, burning brush, doing all that sort of stuff I was talking about in the video I just dropped about a half an hour ago. And then all of a sudden, Mrs. P was checking the news out, and lo and behold, what did she see? Something we talked about months and months ago. And guess what? We were right. Again. So much for conspiracy theories. Remember when the Nord Stream pipeline kind of went kablooey and the U.S. was going, oh, Russia blew up their own pipeline. Oh, Germany did it. Yada, yada. And all of us, the conspiracy theorists that we are, said, this sounds like something the U.S. would do. Guess what? We have a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist from the New York Times, you know, the liberal birdcage liner, New York Times, liberal, okay, far left newspaper. Yeah. What was the guy's name here? Forgot his name here real quick. Seymour Hersh. There we go. Okay. So, yeah, he did a whole bunch of investigating. And I will link, I don't know which one you want, the New York Times story, the International Business Daily story. I mean, this has been picked up by the major, this isn't some alt-right, far conspiracy theory website or whatever. This is a New York Times journalist, and this is being reported on the major publications around the world. Came out about half an hour ago, okay? This is what happened. As he says, the explosives were planted on the pipelines back in June of 2022 by Navy divers under the guise of the Baltops 22 NATO exercise. Okay. The bombs were then detonated 3 months later on September 26th with a remote signal sent by a sonar buoy. All right. The buoy was dropped near the Nord Stream pipelines by a Norwegian Navy P-8 surveillance plane. Okay. Apparently, this was totally Joe, okay? Joe, the CIA, and the military were trying to figure out how to do this. Because if you remember, go back, there are quotes from the administration saying they will stop the Nord Stream pipeline. Remember that? Okay. Joe with that shitty smirk on his face, we'll put an end to it. He did, okay? There was a special task force that was initiated by Joe, okay, with the direct participation of U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. These are international crimes, guys, okay? If this should get a investigation going from The Hague. Should, okay? The Navy wanted to do, as this was all brought out, the Navy wanted to use a submarine to assault the pipeline. They said no. The Air Force talked about dropping bombs with delayed fuses. The White House said no. The CIA basically said whatever was going to be done had to be done covertly, okay? There were guys in the CIA telling the State Department, quote, don't do this. It's stupid and will be a political nightmare if it comes out. The day after Biden's State of the Union address, this gets dropped. Tell me that isn't coincidental. That's the day after, okay? There's a little bit of trying to hide this, too. There better be an investigation of the claims that this, again, Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist from the New York Times reported. And if this is true, Biden needs to be brought up on charges. Jake Sullivan needs to be brought up on charges. That is a declaration of war against Russia. How long have all of us said that? How many times have you heard me call Ukraine Joe's war? Joe wants a war with Russia, no doubt. For 50 years, he's been in Washington, a lot of that time throughout the Cold War. Joe still has Cold War mentalities, even though the Soviet Union hasn't existed for 30 freaking years. Okay. Joe spent the first 20 years of his political career in a Cold War environment. That's about the last time, 1991, when the Soviet Union fell, is about the last time Joe had a coherent thought. Okay. So he's still living as though it's 1991. He still wants to go to war against Russia. And mind you this, I want you to think about when this was out, okay? They were putting this together in December of 2021. When did Russia go into Ukraine? Spring of 2022. Joe was doing this before Russia invaded Ukraine. Okay? So there's nothing to do with Ukraine on this. This isn't trying to penalize Russia for something they were doing. They hadn't done anything yet. Germany was trying to get natural gas from the Russians. Joe wanted to stop it. This administration knows they've fucked everything up possible. I mean, took a great economy, a secure border, low unemployment, low cost of living, on freaking Easy Street, Trump had set everything up for, okay, Joe, if you can just leave the car in neutral and let everything keep going, we'll come out of the pandemic and everything will be fine. Joe came in on day one with that stupid pen and a phone and said, we're going to stop this, we're going to stop this, we're going to stop this, and I'm going to screw up the country entirely. Oh, crap. I've been president for 1 year, and everything's gone to hell. I need to start a war. Who should I start a war with? Gee, let's start a war with Russia. That'll make me look like a hero. Okay? Joe deserves Nuremberg trials for this one. If him and Jake Sullivan were the ones that put this together, this better be investigated from everybody. If the Germans aren't all over this, if the Russians aren't over this, if the Hague isn't all over this to investigate the White House, I don't know what is. Congress better get involved in this when this came out, because the president doesn't have the authorization to declare war. Just so you know, Congress has to do that. This is an act of war that Joe has done. If anybody doesn't understand what type of threat this man is to the world, maybe this will open your freaking eyes. Joe is trying to start World War III. Nobody else. Joe Biden. 100% all him and any of the people that are talking in that earpiece that he has on. This guy deserves a rope and a tree. Nothing less. Pinball out.